Jake rolled behind the main prep counter as energy bolts scorched the air where he'd been standing. The 6 Ravagers spread out to surround him, their weapons sweeping the kitchen. They moved with military precision. These weren't common pirates. "Stay down and we might let you live, human," the lead Ravager called out. Jake's response was to trigger the modified gas line he'd prepared earlier. A controlled explosion sent a fireball across the ceiling, forcing the Ravagers to duck and lose their formation. In that moment of confusion, Jake struck. He came over the counter like a predator, his grandfather's knife leading the way. The first Ravager tried to bring his weapon up, but Jake was already inside his guard. The blade found the gap between armor plates with surgical precision. The second Ravager fired, but Jake was using his falling teammate as a shield. He spun the dying alien around and pushed him into his comrade, then followed with the knife. "2 down, he's military trained," the lead Ravager snarled. "Take him seriously." The remaining 4 Ravagers regrouped, their weapons tracking Jake as he moved through the kitchen. But Jake knew every inch of this space. Every counter, every appliance, every potential weapon. He grabbed a container of pressurized cooking spray and hurled it into the open flames of the stove. The explosion sent metal fragments flying like shrapnel. One Ravager cried out as debris found gaps in his armor. Jake was moving before the smoke cleared. He appeared behind the wounded alien, his knife sliding between neck vertebrae. 3 down. Crix. "Veltar, Lara," Jake called out without taking his eyes off the remaining enemies. "Remember where you saw me cutting vegetables?" The aliens watched in amazement as Jake demonstrated what those primitive food rituals really were. Every precise cut he'd made while preparing meals had been a combat drill. Every careful motion had been practiced for exactly this kind of fight. The lead Ravager fired a sustained burst at Jake's position, scorching the metal counter. But Jake had already moved, using the kitchen equipment as cover. He emerged from behind the walk-in freezer with another knife in his left hand, a smaller blade he'd kept hidden. 2 knives, Commander Veltar whispered. "He fights with 2 weapons." Jake advanced on the remaining Ravagers with both blades ready. His movements were fluid, like a deadly dance. The larger knife deflected energy bolts while the smaller one struck at exposed points on the aliens' armor. The 4th Ravager went down with Jake's smaller blade in his throat. The 5th tried to rush Jake with the butt of his rifle, but found himself facing empty air. Jake had slipped aside and come up behind him, the grandfather's knife sliding home. Only the leader remained. "What are you?" the Ravager demanded, backing toward the destroyed blast door. "Someone your intelligence reports missed?" Jake said. Advancing slowly, the Ravager fired wildly, but Jake moved like smoke, never where the energy bolts expected him to be. He used every piece of kitchen equipment as cover, appearing and disappearing like a ghost. "You fight like a Titan War veteran," the Ravager said. "Good guess," Jake replied. He feinted left, then rolled right, coming up inside the alien's guard. The grandfather's knife, designed to cut through the toughest materials, sliced through the Ravager's armor like it was made of paper. The kitchen fell silent except for the crackling of flames and the hiss of damaged gas lines. 6 dead Ravagers. They scattered among the cooking equipment. Jake stood in the center, both knives still in his hands, breathing calmly. The 3 aliens stared at him in shock. "Impossible," Crix whispered. "You killed 6 armed warriors with kitchen utensils." "Not kitchen utensils," Jake corrected. He held up his grandfather's knife. "Military-grade combat blade designed to look like a cooking implement." "Commander." Veltar's crystalline form caught the light as he moved closer. "You are a soldier, was a soldier," Jake said. "Now I'm a cook who used to be a soldier." "The same thing," Lara said quietly. Jake began cleaning his knives with practiced efficiency. "My grandfather fought in the first human expansion wars. Titan, Europa, the asteroid conflicts. He learned to hide weapons in plain sight because the enemy always looked for obvious threats." "And you?" Veltar asked. "I fought in the Outer Rim conflicts. Places you've probably never heard of. Small wars that kept human colonies safe while the galaxy thought we were just harmless farmers and miners." Crix studied the dead Ravagers with new respect. "Your combat techniques are extremely advanced. Human military training. Jake explained. We learned to use everything as a weapon. The kitchen wasn't a kitchen to me, it was a battlefield waiting to happen. He gestured around the room. Every piece of equipment here can be turned into something lethal. Every ingredient can become a weapon, every cooking technique can become a combat skill. The cutting motions we observed, Lyra said with understanding. You were practicing. Maintaining muscle memory, Jake corrected. A fighter who doesn't practice becomes a dead fighter. More sounds echoed from the corridor. Footsteps, but these were different, lighter, human footsteps. Jake? Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice called through the destroyed doorway. You in there? Kitchen secure, Jake called back. Rodriguez appeared in the doorway with 2 security team members. They stopped short when they saw the dead Ravagers scattered around the kitchen. What the hell happened here? Rodriguez asked. Jake happened, Commander Veltar said with something like awe in his voice. Rodriguez looked at Jake, who was calmly putting his knives away. You did this? They made the mistake of cornering me in my own territory, Jake said. How many were there? One of the security officers asked. 9 total, Jake replied. 3 in the first wave, 6 in the second. Rodriguez stared at the carnage. You killed 9 Ravagers by yourself? With help from kitchen equipment and poor enemy tactics, Jake said modestly. The humans' combat skills are extraordinary, Crix reported. He defeated armed opponents using primitive weapons. Not primitive, Jake corrected again. Camouflaged. Rodriguez was still trying to process what she was seeing. Jake, what exactly were you before you became our cook? Someone who preferred cooking to killing, Jake said. But when killing becomes necessary, he patted the case containing his grandfather's knife. This blade has been in my family for 60 years. It's seen combat on a dozen worlds. My grandfather taught me that. The best weapon is the one your enemy never sees coming. Like a cook who's really a soldier, Lyra said. Like a human who's been underestimated, Jake replied. The ship's communication system crackled to life. All hands, this is the captain. Boarding parties have been repelled. Ravager ships are retreating. The mining colony is secure. Rodriguez grinned. Looks like we won. This time, Jake said. He looked around the destroyed kitchen. Cooking equipment was scattered everywhere. Ingredients were spilled across the floor. It would take days to clean up and get everything working again. I guess I'll be serving cold meals for a while, he said. Commander Veltar approached him. Human Jake Martinez. Just Jake. Jake, I owe you an apology. We all do. We dismissed you as primitive and inefficient. You dismissed what you thought I was, Jake said. Common mistake. Will you teach us? Crix asked suddenly. Teach you what? Your combat techniques. The way you use common objects as weapons. The way you turn this kitchen into a fortress, Jake smiled. That's not cooking? Everything you do is cooking, Lyra said with new understanding. And everything you do is fighting? They're the same skill set. Now you're starting to understand humans, Jake said. He began gathering the salvageable cooking equipment. My grandfather always said that the most dangerous person in any room is the one everyone thinks is harmless. And you've been letting us think you were harmless, Veltar said. Better to be underestimated than feared, Jake replied, until fear becomes useful. Rodriguez was coordinating cleanup efforts through her communicator, but she kept glancing at Jake with new respect. Jake, when this is over, we need to talk about updating your personnel file. Why? Jake asked innocently. I'm still the ship's cook. A cook who single-handedly wiped out a Ravager assault team. Good thing I kept my knives sharp, Jake said. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the mining ship New Frontier, watching the stars through the wide window. The ship had been traveling for 3 months, moving through empty space toward the asteroid belt near Kepler 442. The crew was small but skilled. Jake trusted each person on his ship. Lisa Parker worked in the engine room below. She knew every pipe and wire in the ship. Ryan Cooper handled security and weapons. Though they rarely needed either in deep space, Dr. Amy Foster studied rocks and space samples, looking for valuable minerals they could mine. The New Frontier was not a military ship. It was built for work, not fighting. The hull was thick to protect against space rocks, and the engines were strong enough to pull heavy loads. Jake had captained mining ships for 15 years. He knew how to find good asteroid fields and bring home full cargo holds. "Captain," called out Ben Hayes from the communication station. "I'm getting something strange on the sensors." Jake walked over to look at the screen. A green dot appeared where there should be empty space. "What is it?" "Unknown object, sir. It's big. Much bigger than any asteroid in this area." Ben's fingers moved across the controls. "The shape is wrong, too. Asteroids are rough and uneven. This thing is smooth." Lisa's voice came through the speaker from the engine room. "Captain, I'm seeing power readings that don't make sense." "Whatever that thing is, it's generating a lot of energy." Jake felt his stomach tighten. In 15 years of deep space mining, he had never seen anything like this. The object on the screen was clearly artificial. Someone had built it. But humans were the only spacefaring species they knew about, and this was far from any human colony. "Ryan, get up here," Jake called into his communication device. Ryan Cooper arrived on the bridge within minutes, still carrying his coffee cup. He was a big man with steady hands and quick reflexes. Jake had hired him after Ryan left the Space Marines. "What's the situation, Captain?" "Take a look at this." Jake pointed to the sensor display. Ryan studied the readings and his face grew serious. "That's a ship, Captain. And it's not one of ours." Dr. Amy Foster climbed up from her laboratory, carrying a tablet computer. She was young but brilliant, with degrees in geology and xenobiology. "I heard the discussion over the ship's communication system. Are we really looking at an alien vessel?" Jake nodded slowly. "It seems that way." "Ben, how far away is it?" "About 50,000 kilometers, sir." "It's not moving? Any communication signals?" "Nothing, Captain. Complete radio silence." Jake thought carefully. This was the moment humans had wondered about for centuries. First contact with another intelligent species. But they were just a mining ship, not explorers or diplomats. "Lisa, how are our engines?" "Running perfectly, Captain. If you want to leave, we can be at full speed in 10 minutes. "Ryan, what about our defenses?" "We have mining lasers that could work as weapons and some small rockets for clearing debris. Nothing designed for ship-to-ship combat." Jake made his decision. "We're going to try peaceful contact." "Then send a basic mathematical sequence on all frequencies. Prime numbers, then the Fibonacci sequence. If they're intelligent, they'll recognize the pattern." Ben's hands worked across his controls. "Sending now, Captain." They waited. The alien ship remained silent and motionless for 10 minutes. Then the sensors started screaming warnings. "Captain, it's moving toward us, fast." Ben's voice was tight with worry. "How fast?" "Accelerating beyond anything I've seen." "It'll reach us in less than 20 minutes." Jake's mouth went dry. "Are they responding to our message?" "No mathematical sequences, sir. But I'm picking up something else. Energy building up on their ship." Ryan moved to the weapons control station. "Captain, I recommend we prepare for the worst." "Do it, Lisa. Give me everything the engines have." "Already working on it, Captain." The New Frontier began to turn away from the approaching ship, but it was too late. The alien vessel was much faster and more maneuverable. Within minutes it appeared on their visual screens. Amy gasped when she saw it. The ship was unlike anything humans had ever built. It was black and sleek, with curved surfaces that seemed to flow like water. Strange lights pulsed along its hull in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Captain, they're scanning us," Ben reported. "Multiple energy beams hitting our hull." "Any damage?" "Not yet, but they're learning about our ship's structure." Jake opened the ship-wide communication channel. "All crew, prepare for possible boarding. This is not a drill. Follow Emergency Protocol 7. The alien ship moved closer until it was only a few hundred meters away. Jake could see details on its surface now. There were openings that might be weapons and what looked like docking ports. "Captain, they're extending some kind of tube toward our airlock," Ryan said. "They want to board us." "Should I activate the mining lasers?" Jake hesitated. The alien Ship was 10 times larger than the New Frontier. Their weapons would probably do no damage. Hold fire. Maybe they just want to talk. A new sound echoed through the ship. Metal touching metal? The aliens had connected to their airlock. Captain, they're cutting through the outer door. Lisa's voice was scared now. The metal is melting like butter. Whatever tool they're using is far beyond our technology. Jake looked around the bridge at his small crew. Ben was 25 and had never been in danger. Amy was even younger. Ryan had military experience, but against unknown aliens with superior technology. Everyone stay calm. We don't know their intentions yet, but deep in his heart, Jake feared the worst. The alien ship had approached without answering their peaceful signals. They had boarded without permission. And now they were cutting through steel doors like paper. The sound of tearing metal grew louder. Soon the aliens would be inside their ship. Jake Morrison had spent his life exploring space and finding valuable resources. He had never imagined that humans might be the resource someone else was looking for. The sound of tearing metal stopped. The New Frontier's corridor fell silent except for the hum of air recyclers and the distant rumble of engines. Jake Morrison held his breath, listening for any sign of what was coming through their destroyed airlock. Heavy footsteps echoed through the ship. Not the quick tap of human feet, but slow, deliberate sounds like massive weights hitting the floor. Each step sent small vibrations through the ship's metal frame. Captain, Ben whispered from his station, the motion sensors are picking up. Multiple contacts, at least 6 of them, maybe more? Size? Much larger than human normal. 8 feet tall, maybe taller. Jake felt sweat on his forehead despite the cool air. He activated the internal camera system, switching through views of different corridors. On screen 3, he saw them. The aliens were nothing like the peaceful visitors humans had imagined. In their science fiction stories, they stood upright like humans, but that was where the similarity ended. Their bodies were covered in dark scales that looked harder than steel armor. Long arms ended in clawed hands that could probably tear through metal. Their heads were elongated, with rows of sharp teeth visible even with their mouths closed, but it was their eyes that made Jake's blood turn cold. Yellow eyes that moved constantly, scanning everything around them like predators hunting for prey. These creatures had not come to make friends. The lead alien stopped at a junction in the corridor. It lifted its head and seemed to smell the air, then made a sound that was part growl, part clicking noise. The other aliens responded immediately, spreading out through different passages. They're splitting up, Ryan said quietly. Classic hunting pattern. They want to corner us. Can we seal the blast doors? Already tried, Captain. Their boarding tube is blocking the main airlock, and the blast doors won't stop anything that can cut through our outer hull. Amy moved closer to Jake, her face pale. Captain, look at how they move. They're not exploring or investigating. They know exactly what they're doing. She was right. The aliens moved with purpose and confidence. They had done this before, probably many times. Jake realized with growing horror that the New Frontier and her crew were not the first ship these creatures had boarded. Lisa's voice crackled through the communication system from the engine room. Captain, I can hear them in the lower corridors. They're moving toward the crew quarters. Get out of there, Lisa. Come up to the bridge. I can't, sir. They're between me and the ladder. I'm going to hide in the maintenance crawlspace. Jake wanted to help her, but he had no way to reach the engine room without going through the areas where the aliens were hunting. He made a quick decision. All crew, implement Emergency Protocol 7 immediately. Hide in the prepared locations and stay quiet. Do not try to fight them unless you have no choice. Protocol 7 was something Jake had hoped never to use. It scattered the crew throughout the ship in hidden compartments and emergency shelters. The idea was to make it harder for enemies to find everyone at once. Ryan moved to a weapons locker and pulled out 3 mining laser pistols. These won't do much against those scales, but it's better than nothing. Jake took one of the pistols. The weapon was designed to cut through rock, not fight living creatures. But Ryan was right. It was better than being completely defenseless. The aliens were getting closer. Jake could hear them moving through the ship, opening doors and searching rooms. Sometimes there were sounds of metal being torn apart. They were not being careful with the ship's equipment. "Captain," Ben said in a barely audible voice, "they're on this deck now." Through the bridge's reinforced door, they could hear the aliens moving in the corridor outside. One of them made that clicking sound again, and the others responded. They were communicating, coordinating their search. Amy had her tablet computer open, trying to record everything. "Captain, I'm documenting their behavior. If we survive this, the information could be valuable." "When we survive this," Jake corrected. Though he was not sure he believed his own words, a scream echoed through the ship's communication system. It was cut off quickly, but everyone on the bridge knew what it meant. The aliens had found someone. And that sounded like it came from Section C. Ryan said grimly. Section C contained the crew quarters where most of the ship's personnel would be. Hiding. Jake's heart sank as he realized that Protocol 7 might not be enough. Against these creatures, more sounds came through the walls. Tearing metal, breaking equipment, and worse sounds that Jake did not want to think about. The aliens were systematic in their search, working through each section of the ship methodically. "Captain," Lisa's voice whispered through the communication system, "they found the maintenance crawl space. I can see one of them through the vent grating. It's looking right at me." The communication channel went silent. Jake closed his eyes for a moment, fighting down panic. Lisa Parker had been with him for 5 years. She was like a younger sister to him. Now she was gone, and there was nothing he could do about it. "Captain," Ben said urgently, "they're right outside." The bridge door shuddered under a massive impact. The aliens had found them. Through the thick metal, they could hear claws scraping against the surface, testing for weak points. Another impact, stronger than the first. The door frame began to bend. "The door won't hold much longer," Ryan said, raising his laser pistol. Jake thought quickly. The bridge had an emergency escape route that led to the ship's communication array. From there, they might be able to reach the escape pods. But first they had to get past the aliens in the corridor. "Ben, can you activate the ship's emergency lighting? Make it strobe on and off?" "Yes, sir." "But why? If we're going to run, we need every advantage we can get. Flashing lights might confuse them for a few seconds." The door buckled under another impact. Through the gap, Jake could see yellow eyes staring at them with cold intelligence. Amy grabbed Jake's arm. "Captain, I've been studying their movement patterns. They're not just random predators, they're using military tactics. Someone trained them, or they've evolved to be natural soldiers." That made everything worse. Jake had hoped they were dealing with simple animals driven by hunger. But these creatures were intelligent, organized, and experienced at hunting other species. The door gave way with a sound like breaking thunder. The largest alien stepped through the opening, its head nearly touching the ceiling. Up close, Jake could see that its scales were covered in scars from old battles. This creature was a veteran warrior. It looked around the bridge with those terrible yellow eyes, examining each human like a hunter selecting the best target. When its gaze fell on Jake, he felt like prey being studied by a predator. That was deciding how to make the kill quick and clean. The alien opened its mouth and made a sound that was almost like human speech. But wrong in every way, it was giving orders to the other creatures behind it. Jake Morrison raised his laser pistol, knowing it would probably be useless against the creature's armored hide. But he was the captain of this ship, and he would not go down without a fight. Jake Morrison fired his laser pistol at the massive alien standing in the bridge doorway. The red beam struck the creature's chest and scattered harmlessly across its dark scales like light hitting a mirror. The alien did not even flinch. It looked down at the spot where the laser had hit, then back at Jake with what might have been amusement in those yellow eyes. The creature made a rumbling sound deep in its throat that could have been laughter. "Run!" Jake shouted to his remaining crew. Ben Hayes bolted for the emergency exit behind the captain's chair. Ryan Cooper backed toward the same opening, keeping his weapon trained on the aliens even though it was useless. Amy Foster clutched her tablet computer and followed Ben. Jake stayed behind to give them time to escape. He fired his laser again and again, hoping to slow the creatures down even if he could not hurt them. The alien leader watched him with patient interest, like a cat watching a mouse that had not yet realized it was trapped. The other aliens spread out across the bridge, moving to cut off escape routes. They were in no hurry. They knew the humans had nowhere to go on their own ship. Jake backed through the emergency exit and found himself in a narrow maintenance corridor. Ben, Ryan, and Amy were already climbing down a ladder toward the lower decks. Jake followed them, but he could hear the aliens pursuing. Their claws scraped against metal as they squeezed through the smaller passage. "Captain, where are we going?" Amy called up from below, engineering section. "There might be tools we can use down there." They dropped through 3 levels of the ship, moving through passages barely wide enough for human shoulders. Behind them, the aliens moved more slowly because of their size, but they never stopped following. Jake's mind raced as they climbed down. The engineering section had cutting torches, explosive charges for asteroid mining, and heavy equipment. Maybe they could find something that would work better than the laser pistols. They reached the main engineering deck and ran toward the power core chamber. The room was filled with humming machinery and the bright glow of the ship's fusion reactor. Thick cables and pipes ran along the walls, carrying power and coolant throughout the vessel. "Ben, can you access the ship's internal sensors from here?" Jake asked. Ben found a control terminal and his fingers flew across the display. "Yes, Captain." "The aliens are still following us through the maintenance shaft, about 2 minutes behind." Ryan, "What kind of tools do we have down here?" Ryan was already searching through equipment lockers. Plasma cutters, mining charges, some heavy wrenches, nothing designed for fighting. Amy sat down hard against a wall, breathing heavily. "Captain, what's the point? They're stronger, faster, and their skin stops our weapons. We can't fight them." Jake looked at the young scientist and saw the despair in her eyes. She was right about their physical advantages, but something about the situation bothered him. These aliens were clearly experienced hunters. They had probably conquered many other species. So why were they taking so long to finish off a few humans? "Amy, you've been studying them. What have you noticed about their behavior?" She looked at her tablet, reviewing the recordings she had made. "They're methodical, patient. They move like predators who are completely confident in their superiority. But they haven't rushed us. Even when they had us trapped on the bridge, they didn't just charge in and finish us quickly." Ryan paused in his search through the tool lockers. "The captain's right. In the military, when you have overwhelming force, you use it fast and hard. These aliens are playing with us." Jake felt a spark of understanding. "They're not just hunting us, they're studying us. Testing how we react under pressure? But why?" Ben asked from his position at the control terminal. Before Jake could answer, the sound of tearing metal echoed from the ceiling above them. The aliens had reached the engineering deck and were cutting through the floor to get into the power core chamber. "Everyone spread out," Jake ordered. "Make them work to find us." Ben and Amy moved behind the large coolant processors. Ryan took position near the main power coupling, gripping a plasma cutter like a weapon. Jake stayed near the fusion reactor itself. Thinking frantically, a section of the ceiling collapsed, and the largest alien dropped through the hole. It landed gracefully despite its size and immediately began scanning the room with those intelligent yellow eyes. The other aliens followed, moving to surround the humans' hiding places. Jake stepped out from behind the reactor housing. There was no point in hiding anymore. The alien senses were too sharp, and they knew the humans were trapped. The alien leader approached Jake slowly, savoring the moment. It was nearly 3 feet taller than him, with claws that could tear him apart in seconds. This close, Jake could see more details of its alien nature. The scales were not just armor, they were beautiful in their own way, with subtle patterns that caught the light. This was not a mindless monster, but an intelligent being from another world. The creature stopped just out of arm's reach and studied Jake with obvious curiosity. It tilted its head and made a series of clicking sounds that were clearly some form of language. Jake got the impression it was asking him a question. "I don't understand you," Jake said calmly. The alien tried again, this time with different sounds. When Jake still did not respond, it seemed to shrug in a very human-like gesture. Then it raised one clawed hand, preparing to strike. Jake did not run or beg or cry out. He had accepted that he was going to die, but he would face it with dignity. He looked directly into the alien's yellow eyes and waited. The alien's hand stopped in mid-strike. Its eyes widened slightly, and it made a sound of surprise. For several seconds, the creature stood frozen, staring at Jake's face. Jake realized what was happening. The alien had expected to see fear, panic, or pleading in his eyes. Instead, it saw calm acceptance and quiet determination. The creature had probably never encountered prey that did not show terror in its final moments. "You didn't expect that, did you?" Jake said quietly. The alien lowered its hand slowly, still staring at Jake with confusion. It turned its head and called to the other aliens in their clicking language. They responded with what sounded like questions. Jake took a step closer to the creature, ignoring the danger. "You've hunted a lot of different species, haven't you? And they all reacted the same way when you cornered them. They begged or ran or broke down in fear." The alien's eyes never left Jake's face. It seemed genuinely puzzled by this human who was not behaving like proper prey. "But humans are different. We're not prey animals, we never were." Jake's voice grew stronger as he spoke. "We're the species that hunted giant mammals with nothing but stone spears. We're the ones who survived ice ages and climbed to the top of our planet's food chain." Amy emerged from her hiding place, holding her tablet. She had been recording everything, and her scientific mind was working furiously. "Captain, I think you're right. Look at its body language. It's confused." The alien leader made more clicking sounds to its companions. Jake could not understand the words, but the tone suggested uncertainty. These creatures had encountered something. Outside their experience, Ryan stepped out with the plasma cutter in his hands, but he did not raise it as a weapon. "Captain, what do we do now?" Jake looked around the power core chamber at his remaining crew, then back at the alien leader. The creature was still watching him with those penetrating yellow eyes, waiting to see what the human would do next. "Now, we show them what humans are really like," Jake said. He reached over to a control panel and began entering commands. If he was going to die, he would make sure these aliens remembered this encounter for a long time. The alien leader watched Jake's hands move across the control panel with growing interest. In its long career as a hunter, it had never seen prey try to operate complex machinery while facing death. Most creatures either fled in panic or collapsed. In terror, when confronted by a Vorthek warrior, Jake's fingers flew across the display, activating systems throughout the ship. He was not trying to escape or call for help. Instead, he was deliberately overloading the power distribution network. Creating an improvised weapon from the ship's own fusion reactor, the alien made a questioning click to its companions. In their harsh language, it was asking if any of them had seen this behavior before. The responses were negative. In hundreds of conquered worlds and thousands of hunts, the Vorthak had never encountered a species that turned to technology when facing certain death. "What are you doing, Captain?" Amy asked in a whisper. "Creating a power surge that will overload the main coupling," Jake replied without taking his eyes off the controls. "It won't destroy the ship, but it will create a feedback pulse that should disable their equipment." The alien leader's head snapped toward Jake when it heard him speaking calmly to his crew. In Vorthik experience, prey species could barely think clearly when cornered, let alone coordinate complex plans. This human was not only thinking, he was teaching others and working toward a goal. Ryan moved closer to Jake, still holding the plasma cutter. "How long do you need?" 3 minutes for the power to build up. 5 minutes for the surge to reach critical levels. Ben emerged from behind the coolant processors, his face pale but determined. "Captain, I can help. The communication array is tied into this same power grid. If we coordinate the overload, we can send a distress signal at the same time." The alien leader took a step back, its yellow eyes moving rapidly between the humans. These creatures were not just failing to show proper fear, they were actively planning resistance. In Vorthik culture, this behavior was completely outside the natural order. Prey ran or submitted. They did not strategize. They acted Amy kept her tablet recording everything, her scientific training overcoming her fear. Captain, look at how it's reacting. The alien is confused by our behavior. I think we've violated some kind of fundamental assumption about how prey species should act. Jake continued working on the power overload while keeping one eye on the alien leader. The creature was clearly struggling with something beyond its normal experience. Its body language showed uncertainty, which Jake suspected was not common for these predators. In our galaxy, Jake said, speaking directly to the alien even though he knew it probably could not understand English, humans spent millions of years as hunters, not prey. We tracked animals across continents. We planned ambush that took days to set up. We never learned to surrender because we never had to. The alien's head tilted as it listened to Jake's voice. Even without understanding the words, it could hear the confidence and determination in his tone. This was not how defeated prey was supposed to sound. The other aliens moved restlessly around the chamber, waiting for orders from their leader. But the leader seemed frozen by indecision. Jake realized that these creatures operated on instinct and tradition. When faced with a situation outside their experience, they had no protocols to follow. Ryan moved to the secondary power coupling. When I give the signal, activate the plasma cutter and cut through the main coolant line. That will flood this section with superheated vapor, Captain. I know, but it will also force them to retreat or risk damage to their equipment. The alien leader's eyes widened as it watched the humans coordinate their resistance. In Vorthek, hunting tradition, cornered prey either fought with desperate, uncoordinated attacks or simply gave up and waited for death. These humans were doing neither. They were working together with calm precision under extreme pressure. Amy continued documenting the aliens' reactions. Captain, I think we're witnessing a kind of cultural shock. This creature's entire worldview is based on predator-prey relationships that follow predictable patterns. We're not following those patterns. Ben had reached another control terminal and was working to amplify the communication array. Captain, if we can get a signal out, other human ships will know what happened here. Even if we don't survive, our species will be warned. The alien leader made a sharp clicking sound to its companions. Jake could not understand the words, but the tone suggested a command to wait. The creature was buying time while it tried to process this unprecedented situation. Jake finished his work on the power overload and stepped back from the control panel. The reactor was building toward a controlled overload that would send a massive energy pulse through all the ship's systems. In 3 minutes, any alien equipment would be temporarily disabled. Ready when you are, Captain, Ryan said from his position near the coolant system. The alien leader looked around the chamber at the 3 humans, who were calmly preparing for what might be their final battle. It made a low rumbling sound that could have been frustration or confusion. In its long career, it had never encountered prey that refused to act like prey. Jake met the creature's gaze directly, showing no fear or submission. You expected us to beg for mercy, didn't you? Or maybe run around in panic while you hunted us down one by one. The alien's eyes narrowed as it studied Jake's face. It could see intelligence there and planning and something else that troubled it deeply. These humans reminded it of something, but it could not identify what. But humans don't beg, Jake continued. When we're cornered, we fight. When we're outgunned, we improvise. When we face extinction, we adapt. That's how we survived on a planet full of predators bigger and stronger than us. Amy lowered her tablet and looked directly at the alien leader. Captain, I think it's starting to understand. Look at its body language. It's not moving like a confident predator anymore. She was right. The alien's posture had changed subtly. Its claws were no longer extended, and its stance was more defensive than aggressive. The creature was reconsidering its assessment of the situation. The power overload reached critical levels. Warning lights flashed throughout the engineering section, and a low humming sound filled the air. Jake placed his hand on the final activation control. Last chance, he said to the alien. You can leave our ship now, or you can find out what happens when humans decide they have nothing left to lose. The alien leader stood completely motionless, staring at Jake with those penetrating yellow eyes. For the first time in its existence, as an apex predator, it was experiencing something new and disturbing. These humans were not acting like any prey species it had ever encountered. They showed no fear, they worked together under pressure, and they had turned their own ship into a weapon. The alien's instincts were screaming warnings that it did not understand. Jake's hand hovered over the activation control, waiting to see what the alien would choose. In this moment, frozen between action and hesitation, both species were learning something new about the universe and their place in it.